Hello, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started.
Maybe if only if you need to get things done on time, she get a bonus. And the others should get it. And the bonus should be a part of it. Is she ready?
Okay, we're going to change it up in the reading order.
That's fine. That way I get the shorter one. She gets the longer one.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call to order our meeting of the Monroe County Council. It is Tuesday, October 17th, 2023. And I'd like to note for the record that Councilor McKim is not in attendance. He unfortunately is out of town, and during budget adoption, you cannot be on Zoom. So he is not going to be joining us this evening, although I know he wishes he could. Councilor Iverson, Councilor Crossley, Councilor Deckard, Councilor Hawk, and Councilor Munson are in attendance here in the Nat U Hill Room, along with myself. Regarding tonight's agenda, does anyone wish to add anything to the agenda? Okay, in that case, we will consider the agenda approved. And tonight is the second reading and the adoption of the 2024 budgets for the Monroe Fire Protection District, the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District, and Monroe County as a whole. There is a lot of reading, and I am going to be seeking some assistance with the reading this evening, just as we did last week. First, we will begin with the Monroe Fire Protection District 2024 budget. And I was thinking of asking Mr. Iverson if he would kindly read the Monroe Fire Protection.
I will happily do so. Be it ordained and resolved by the Monroe County Council that for the expenses of the Monroe Fire Protection District for the year ending December 31st, 2024, the sums herein specified are hereby appropriated and ordered set apart out of the several funds herein named and for the purposes herein specified, subject to laws governing the same. Such sums herein appropriated shall be held to include all expenditures authorized to be made during the year, unless otherwise expressly stipulated and provided for by law. In addition, for the purposes of raising revenue to meet the necessary expenses of the Monroe Fire Protection District, the property tax levies and property tax rates as herein specified are included herein. Budget Form 4B for all funds must be blah, blah, blah. Do I need to read that? I don't know. Budget Form B for all funds must be completed and submitted in the manner prescribed by the Department of Local Government Finance. This ordinance resolution will be in full force and effect from and after its passage and approval by the Monroe County Council. Funds, name Special Fire General. Adopted budget is $14,995,240. The adopted tax levy is $9,013,801, and the adopted tax rate is 0.2546. For Special Cume Fire, the adopted budget is $1,178,766. The adopted tax levy is $1,215,418, and the adopted tax rate is 0.0333, for a total adopted budget of $16,174,006. A total adopted tax levy of $10,229,219. And a total adopted tax rate of 0.2879.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from council regarding the Monroe Fire Protection District? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment on the Monroe Fire Protection District budget for 2024? I'm not online and, but thank you for putting it right there. I do not see anyone online with comments either. So may I have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hogg,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz.
Yes,
Motion passed unanimous.
thank you. Now we're at item 3B, which is the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District 2024 budget. And I will ask Counselor Crossley, would you be willing to read that one? Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Ordinance resolution number 23-40. Be it ordained resolved by the Monroe County Council that for the expense of Monroe County Solid Waste Management District for the year ending December 31st, 2024, the sums herein specified are hereby appropriated and ordered, set apart out of several funds herein named and for the purposes herein specified, subject to the laws governing the same. Such sums herein appropriated shall be held to include all expenditures authorized to be made during the year unless otherwise expressly stipulated and provided for by law. In addition, for the purpose of raising revenue to meet the necessary expenses of Monroe County Solid Waste Management District, the property tax levies and property tax rates as herein specified are included herein. Budget Form 4B for all funds must be completed and submitted in the manner prescribed by the Department of Local Government Finance. This ordinance/resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and approval by the Monroe County Council. Fund name or fund code 1215, fund name, non-reverting capital projects, adopted budget 0, adopted tax levy 0, adopted tax rate 0.000. Fund code 8210, special solid waste management, adopted budget $3,063,795. Adopted tax levy, $2,178,113. Adopted tax rate, 0.0260. Fund code 8283, solid waste district debt service. Adopted budget, $304,770. Adopted tax levy, $292,565. Adopted tax rate, 0.0035. Adopted budget total, $3,368,565. Adopted tax levy, $2,470,678. Adopted tax rate, 0.0295.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Comments? Any public comment on this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, could we have a roll call vote on the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District 2024 budget?
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hogg,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes,
Counselor Crossley.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
all right, that brings us to the ordinance for the Monroe County 2024 budget. And this was a long one. I'll go ahead. Why don't I start and do the first set of funds, and then would you mind doing the home rules?
Yes.
Us?
Yes, I can do it.
Could I
Thank you.
ask a question in advance?
Of course.
Could you remind me, I'm speaking to county attorney, why the debt service levy is where it is?
It's still listed at 5 million instead of the lower amount.
That amount is what we put in with regards, to budgeting. When the paperwork is finalized on the GEO bond, then DLGF will make those changes after they receive all that documentation. So we leave it as is until they go through and then they fix it.
I understand it was advertised much higher, but that's not the number we adopted before. So I'm happy to see you here, Jeff. The bond that we had discussed was like 3,200,000 or something of the sort. And this is saying we're adopting a levy of 4.4 million. And I'm sure that I should remember the answer, but I don't.
And I think I'll just remind that at last week's council meeting, the council approved the bond documentation for a $3.1 million bond. This is sent to the state gets a copy of it, and the state, when they do their, I want to call them 16-line statements, but they have a much more advanced and technical name than that. The 1782 statements, when they come in, it will only put in the amount of what the debt is, or the debt payments are actually, and then it will adjust the rate accordingly. So at the end of the day, the amount on the tax bill next year will be reflective of a $3.1 million bond.
Well, so I did remember the right number, and
Yes.
I did remember that they advertised it at that 5 million. But I'm not comfortable with advertising it now at the 4.4 million, because could this council then adjust that bond number up to 4.4? Because we've already advertised it at 4.4, adopting it at 4.4.
I am not bond counsel, so I do not know the answer to that. I do know that the appropriation, which will be on your next agenda, next Tuesday's agenda, reflects the 3.1 million. I suppose technically, I think if there were time, by now in the end of the year, a new bond could have been issued for the remaining amount, but I don't foresee that happening.
Did you review this and okay it to be advertised at the public meeting at 4.4 million? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but after I've said to everybody, now don't worry about us saying 5 million because we're doing 3.1.
Right.
And then we're going to read this off saying, oh, we think it, we're agreeing it's 4.4. Do however you wish. I don't support
We
it.
typically will advertise high. I think
I get that, but
we typically don't have the adopted budget be that high. Like once we get to this point, I don't think that it's in the past been at that high advertised level. So, I mean, to her point,
I would
it's
just
different.
if you were going to reduce that amount in your final vote, I would just tell you to leave enough room so that the interest that is going to accrue on the debt service payment is collected, because we would not want to, and that, you could, I believe that the bond was 3.1, you go 3.2 million, and that would cover that. That would also make it so you couldn't issue another bond, because then you're only paying debt service fee or the bond fees in order to get the bond. So it wouldn't be practical. So I don't have a problem with that. I just can't do the math to tell you what that would.
Sure. I'd like to have our auditor's office weigh in on this.
Okay, so I discussed this with the DLGF, and they will adjust the rate accordingly, as everyone else has told you as well. And this is outside of our levy, and we're only obviously however the bond is closed, that's how it will be. So it's going to be at the 3.1. The DLGF said they advised that we could change it, but it didn't make a difference. So I just didn't at that point in time. However, I can. It truly is just not going to make a difference unless we're going to scramble here at the end of the year and try to have another bond approved at this point.
I think for transparency's sake, I think it's it's a better practice to be a little bit closer when we do our adoption than to leave it at the 5 million, but I will defer to others on council.
I'm not happy with this at all, but you know, I mean, I don't have to be the one to support it and I won't. It was hard enough for me to say going into it that I supported the bond this year
Right.
because I support what they're talking about. But I've seen before when it's, oh, well, we're not really talking about building this garage. And then by the end of the week, they were, oh, yeah, they were talking about building the garage. So pardon me if I have a lot of questions.
I think it's a good point. Any other comment? No one else has strong feelings on this?
I mean, council is correct. We talked about this previously. DLGF is weighing in and saying the same thing that council is saying. I think we are being very transparent here. I think even the advertised amounts that are here are going to be, adjusted as the agreement is between our auditor's office and council. So I'm comfortable with the way things are, given the advice that we're getting, and also, the conversation we had, what was it, a week ago? So those are my feelings on this matter.
Anyone else have thoughts on this?
I think it's important for the public to understand what the real numbers are.
Right.
And typically we rely on the news media to do this rather than the public notice announcements in the newspaper or wherever, but or on the internet. So as much as we can provide that information to the news media so that they have the exact numbers, I hope we will be doing that.
I agree.
And as a reminder, when DLGF looks at our numbers that we send up there on the levy controlled funds, they will look to make sure that we are not going above the allowed levy growth. And they'll cut us down to the right amount of levy. And we advertise a little high for the rate so that we don't get messed up with the rate, and then they'll adjust the rate. That's on levy controlled funds. Then we talk about something called rate controlled funds, and those are those CUME funds. And that's where it has to be the rate, the 0.033 or the 0.032, whichever rate it is. Then we go into debt funds. Well, that debt, when you first advertise it during the local budget notice, you set it high because you don't really know what we, the council, are going to decide. And so they set it high enough so that we could have that debate to decide how much we were going to do. But at this point in time, now you're setting a rate. If you look at that debt service, you're seeing that rate. And we vote on this for that higher amount with that rate. And if between now and the time we actually move forward with the bond, we haven't, right?
Right.
We haven't sold the bond. Somebody says, oh, we've got this other good plan and we've advertised high enough, we can do it. I'm saying legally, you probably could. So I did try to reach DLGF today to talk to Fred, and he was not in. But at any rate, there you go. I can't help but call our attention to it.
I appreciate it. Because I agree that I would rather be more accurately reflective of our intent.
To be off by $1 million just to put in some extra because we need to make sure we got interest to cover. I mean, that might make everybody feel comfortable going, oh, well, we've got it at least high enough. That's comfortable for everyone except for the people we represent, which is the public. I knew I didn't
Hesitate to change this mid-meeting simply because I don't want to have to do the math that in the other columns might be affected and mess it up and this is the official reading. So I just want to express my concern, and And hope that, as Counselor Munson pointed out, that it has been clear to the public and the media that our intent with the debt service is a lower budgeted amount than is currently listed. So with that, I'm going to just glance around and make sure no one's turning red as I do this, but I'm going to go ahead with reading this because I don't want to have to read it over if it doesn't get said. Yes.
Well, and I would say that my intent also is that 3.1 million. And I mean, we're saying this in front of our county treasurer, we're saying it in front of representatives from our auditor, in front of the media, in front of the folks at home. That is my intent. And I'm going to earmark this as an item that I watch intently to make sure that that intent is followed through. And I think that is our duty to do. At the same time, I will say this, we're at a point where the work on this budget has brought us to this point. And so my takeaway is that work we've done does move forward. My intent now is to watch this, which is what I was hired to do by the taxpayers. And I took their instructions seriously. I appreciate Counselor Hawks pointing this out. Now we have to watch it and move forward in my humble opinion.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments before I read? All right. I'm going to abbreviate the top part here and then jump into the numbers if that feels okay with everyone. Great. So be it ordained by the Monroe County Council that for expenses of Monroe County for the year ending December 31st, 2024, the sums herein specified are hereby appropriated and ordered set apart out of the several funds herein named and for the purposes herein specified, subject to the laws governing the same. Fund code 01, let me restart it. Fund code 0101, general, $48,777,223 is the adopted budget. Adopted tax levy of $22,133,197. Adopted tax rate of 0.2244. Fund code 0102, election/registration. Adopted budget of $1,722,733. Adopted tax levy of $1,411,781. Adopted tax rate of 0.0143. Fund code 0124, 2015 reassessment. Adopted budget $845,997. Adopted levy is $707,273, and adopted tax rate is 0.0072. Fund code 0180, debt service. Adopted budget is $5 million. Adopted tax levy is $4,424,365. Adopted tax rate is 0.0449. Fund code 0254, local income tax. Adopted budget of $3,930,339. Adopted tax levy is 0. Adopted tax rate of 0. Fund code 0616, Convention and Visitors Bureau. Adopted budget $2,522,777. Adopted tax levy of 0 and adopted tax rate of 0. Fund code 0702 highway, adopted budget $6,877,754. Adopted tax levy and rate of both 0. Fund 0702. Did I already do that one?
And you did not.
Okay. 0702 highway. Adopted budget $6,877,754. Adopted levy is 0, tax rate 0. 0703 highway special, 0 for the budget, 0 for the levy, and 0 for the tax rate. 0706 local road and street, budget of $1,020,000 with an adopted tax levy of 0 and a tax rate of 0. 0790 cumulative bridge, adopted budget $2,075,599, adopted tax levy of $2,137,685, adopted tax rate of 0.0213. 0792 County Major Bridge has an adopted budget of $1,800,001, adopted tax levy of $3,342,015, and an adopted tax rate of 0.0333. 0801 Health has an adopted budget of $982,509, adopted tax levy of 0, and adopted tax rate of 0. 1310 Park Non-Reverting Capital has an adopted budget of $60,000, with 0 as a levy and 0 as the tax rate. 2102 Aviation/Airport has an adopted budget of $1,503,333, an adopted tax levy of $1,075,506, and an adopted tax rate of 0.0109. 2391 Cumulative Capital Development has an adopted budget of $3,789,426, $3,342,015 is the levy, and the tax rate is 0.0333. 2402 Economic Development has an adopted budget of $10,725,750, adopted tax levy of 0, and an adopted tax rate of 0 as well. The total for these funds is $91,633,400. Oh my gosh.
You're doing fine.
The total is $91,633,438. The total adopted tax levy is $38,573,907, and the adopted tax rate is 0.3896.
I'll take over from here. I'm going to move debt to the home ruled funds. I'll do fund code, fund name, and the adopted budget for each. Here we go. Somebody watch me on this. Fund code 9500, extradition and sheriff's assistance. Adopted budget of $538. 9501 surveyor's corner perpetuation. Adopted budget $201,807. 9502 local public health services 1161. $1,518,733. 9503 Monroe County 911 Fund, $867,000. 9504 Monroe County Convention Center debt, $636,000 as an adopted budget. 9505 auditors and eligible deductions, $355,272. 9508 user fee jury pay, $36,500. 9509 user fees juvenile probation, $18,883. 9510 user fees adult probation, $259,788. 9511 user fees project income job, $649,053. 9512 supplemental PD services, $1,265,764. 9513 clerk's record perpetuation, $139,968. 9514 user fees diversion prosecutor, $146,838. 9515 user fees court alcohol drug, $217,610. 9516 local health maintenance, $32,213. 9517 emergency planning right to know, $16,050. Misdemeanor Community Correction, $151,300. Alternative dispute, pardon me, let me reread that last line. 9519 misdemeanor community correction, $151,300. 9521 alternative dispute resolution, $14,700. 9522 sales disclosure county share, $95,595. 9523 convention visitors cap improvement maintenance, $100,000. 9524 county offender transportation, $3,000. 9525 local health department trust accountability, $76,165. 9526 user fees problem solving courts, $53,007. 9527 Westside Economic Development Richland Township TIF, $2,213,924. 9528 46 Corridor Economic Development Bloomington Township TIF, $266,744. 9529 Fullerton Pike Economic Development TIF, $138,101. 9530 Plat Book, $43,433. 9531 Convention Center Operating, $594,000. 9532 User Fees Cable Franchise, $513,930. 9535 PSAP Interlocal, $2,585,000. 9543 Public Health Emergency Fund, $20,000. 9544 Identification Security Protection, $18,000. 9548 Parks Non-Reverting Operating, $243,635. 9551 Recorders Records Perpetuation, $385,114. 9552 Stormwater Management, $2,485,222. 9559 County Elected Officials Train, $20,000. 9571 Public Safety Lit, $3,962,024. 9588 Federal Award Title 4D, $57,086. 9589 Curry Profile TIF, $204,715, for a total of adopted budgets of $20,606,712.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments from council on the Monroe County budget? And is there any public comment on the Monroe County 2024 budget? If we'll do 3 minutes at a time and come on up here to the podium if you're in the room, and if you have comments online, please use the Zoom feature to raise your hand and we will call on you.
Order. Order in the honorable room. Order. Good evening. Before you is the honorable, respectable, and highly accredited, revered, honorable Judge Dame Geeky Fudd. My honor is presiding before you today in regards to the budget discussion to render judgment upon your procurements and proceeding. Excuse me, we need your real name for the record, please.
There may be somebody named Nicole Siegel underneath these honorable robes and vestments. Given the evidence you have brought before me, my decision is unanimous magnanimous. Cheryl Munson, Marty Hawk, Trent Deckert, Kate Wiltz, Jennifer Crossley, Peter Iverson, Jeff McKim in absentia. It is the final and uncontestable opinion of this court that long esteemed purveyor of hard knock reality and tough love truth that you are afflicted with political, hypocritical, pseudo compassionitosis. In my patho-psycho wisdom, I pronounce you guilty of pretending to care as smokescreen for condescending condemnation of people disadvantaged by the consequences of political decisions you have made, hiding behind dismissive hand-wringing over the impossibility of real solutions. And you still don't know how much it will cost to renovate these. In the opinion of court, the course of your treatment is clear. 35 years in prison in the newly constructed Monroe County Health Justice Center, Center for Resources, Justice, Compassionate Treatment Center for Justice. The sentence is for your own group. To cure what is otherwise an intractable condition, you will have a few days to gather your facts and say your last words to your children, friends, and community before your treatment begins. Officers of the law will be arriving at your respective time residence on October 28, 2023 to select you for processing. Make your arrangements quickly. And truly may God be with you always.
Thank you. That was one of the most creative public comments I've ever seen. Yeah,
We need that. We need what the message was.
come on up.
I'm speaking to make comments on the budget discussion under question today. My name is Leroy Jones. I'm an honest country farmer and politician from the local community, deeply rooted with my friends and family in town. First off, I'd like to congratulate you on forgetting about this hullabaloo of the proposal to build the new jail. Given the wide and, might I say, diverse attendance here to discuss other issues, it's clear there's a lot that people here in this community care about. And it's obvious that everyone who matters in this town wants this new justice center. And while the, violent trash and thugs will end up in the place, they won't like it, but it's a tough love world, baby. While I'm speaking about the budget, I did want to share, I think names are important. There hasn't been enough discussion given to the name of the new facility. I would recommend perhaps the Leroy Jones Monroe County Love Asylum for the criminally unwell. How about the Jones Center, Centerstone Resource Center for involuntary treatment of criminal psychosis. But us farmers, we're sometimes a little stuck in the past, and snappy branding is in these days. What about the Jones Love Zone? You see, I believe this facility can be a safe space for revealing the true nature of ourselves. It can be a safe space for us to finally admit the sweet nourishment we get from seeing those who have done wrong suffer. And I invite you all to take off the masks and acknowledge the sweet nourishment you get from seeing the pain of those who have done wrong, seeing their suffering, seeing their separation. May we all drink together of that suffering. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Welcome.
I'll do this later. Okay. So, first of all, thank you for your time.
Really close.
My name is Donielle Bird, and I want to thank you for all of your time and attention and your service to the community. But as a longtime community member and social worker, and also a member of Care Not Cages and a board member of New Leaf, New Life, I would strongly urge you to not fund the construction of a new jail. I know there's been a lot of time, attention. I've been a part of that process as well, and I've attended meetings from the beginning. But I, especially given these things that I want to mention, there's still been no comprehensive assessment completed to renovate the current facility. The current location is ideal. I've been on Nextdoor. People are blowing up about, oh my gosh, there's going to be a jail now near my neighborhood. It's going to be near a Habitat neighborhood, on and on. We've got a location right now. And the cost to relocate the prosecutor's office, the courts, the public defender's office, the sheriff's department. We don't have numbers, hard numbers for those things. I don't think it's responsible with our tax money to move ahead on a new facility without considering all of those additional costs that are coming down the road. Also, population increase. I've heard a lot about that. Well, our population is increasing, so we need a bigger jail. Population increase does not mean that we need to increase our jail beds. There are many evidence-based methods to increase community safety that don't involve cages. There are many things that the consultants identified that we need to do as a county. I know many of you here in this room have been working diligently on those as well. I think we should move forward on those improvements before we charge through with a new jail. Also, mental health, or jails are not mental health facilities. I think by continuing to talk about how we're going to make our jails that way, we are legitimizing the use of jails and cages for mental health facilities. I'm a social worker. I'm a mental health provider. That is not a place that people go to get better, nor do they get substance use disorder treatment there. So that is an absolutely misguided direction. So, and finally, I just urge you to invest our tax money on evidence-based community safety measures, not bright, new, shiny cages. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public to make comment?
Hello. I would also like to speak on the topic of the budget that you're deciding on and the choices that you're going to make for the future of our county.
Can you please state your name for the record? Thank you.
Yes, my name is Sam Holdeman. As you go forward with making the budget for 2024, I would like to ask you to decrease your funding for prosecution and for probation. If we as a county are going to be committed in diversion, and I hear a lot of rhetoric around that, about how we want to be progressive and divert people from the criminal legal system, then we need to also adjust our funding. There has to be a shift away from prosecution and from probation, because that's where it all starts, and that funnels and creates a jailable population that then we are looking at, diverting from at that point. If we just don't fund the things that are entrapping people and sort of killing them by 1,000 cuts, and instead invest them, as has been previously mentioned, in things like permanent supportive housing and actual sort of resources that are available to people to use in a non-coercive way, I think we will all be a lot better off, and it'll be a lot more responsible use of our money. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to comment? I do not see any here in the Nat U Hill room, and I do not see any hands raised online. So if there are no more comments, I'm going to go ahead and call for a roll call vote on the 2024 Monroe County budget.
Counselor Hawk,
No.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Decker.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
All right. Thank you. We are at item number 4 on our agenda, and this is the second reading and adoption of the Monroe County 2024 salary ordinance. And in keeping with moving along, make sure I'm looking at the right one. The first one is for elected officials. And it is quite long. Would either one of you lovely ladies at the end of the dais would like to read the? Can you read?
I should do it.
Well, I don't care.
Go ahead,
I
start.
don't even know which one you're on.
The elected
this one.
officials.
Elected officials.
You can handle this one.
Can we start with now be it ordained?
I think that's perfectly appropriate.
Okay.
You go ahead.
All right. Now be it ordained by the Monroe County Council of Indiana that this ordinance affixes the number of and compensation for elected officials of the county from the period of January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2024, whose salary is comprised of funds payable from any county fund or budget as provided by IC 36-2-5 et sec. Are hereby solidly fixed, and the following maximum level of salary is shown on the quote, elected officials salary compensation grid. All payments made pursuant to this ordinance are contingent upon the strict compliance with and adherence to the benefit, compensation, fiscally related and state and federally mandated requirements of the Monroe County Personnel Policy Handbook. It is the intent of the County Council that this language will encourage compliance with personnel policies which may have a fiscal impact on Monroe County government. This is law. For elected officials, time worked on or after January 1, 2024 and prior to midnight, December 31st, 2024 shall be calculated and paid within the parameters of this salary ordinance and personnel policy handbook, regardless of when the payment is issued. Elected officials shall not receive compensation above the salary range authorized for their position in the elected official compensation grid. The county order shall not issue pay warrant for pay that exceeds the authorized amount specified in the salary ordinance. The compensation amounts listed are an annual appropriation amount. Calculation of the biweekly salary rate may result in a slight variation and will not be adjusted at year end. Elected official base rate schedule. In order to establish a more equitable system of setting compensation for Monroe County elected officials, not set by the state, the County Council has established within the annual salary ordinance a base rate for elected officials with a schedule of amounts to be applied. The base rate schedule is outlined in Section 1 of the elected official salary compensation grid. The chief public defender is excluded as the salary and compensation is the same as the salary and compensation of the elected prosecutor. The sheriff is excluded from the base rate schedule as his/her salary is paid pursuant to IC 36-2-13-2.5 or IC 36-2-13-2.8. Additional information regarding payments of certification, supplementals, and or per diems is outlined in Section 2 of the elected officials salary compensation grid. Monroe County policy regarding salaries tied to state mandated salaries. The annual salary for the Monroe County Sheriff is tied or related to the salaries mandated by the state of Indiana for the Monroe County Circuit Court judges and the Monroe County prosecutor. The state mandated salaries are amended annually on July 1st. It is the intent and direction of the Monroe County Council that any and all salaries paid by the County Council which are tied to or related to the Monroe County Sheriff, as is mandated by the state of Indiana, shall be automatically amended at the same time as the state mandated salaries. The county council recognizes this is an exception to the general rule for county set salaries, which are generally modified on January 1st. Presented to the Monroe County Council of Indiana by induction in full for the first time on the 10th day of October, and presented to the Monroe County Council, duly read in full for the second time on the 17th day of October, 2023.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments on the salary ordinance for elected officials for 2024? Yes, sir.
I just want to make a comment. I think that this is represented in this budget, the budget that's next, and the budget that's behind. I think a lot of people have worked considerably over all this process, President Wiltz, namely on this a salary compensation that figures out chief deputies, elected officials, not only that in the next budget as well. And a lot of elected officials and department heads came forward and said, here are the things that we wish to do in our own departments to get us to this point. And I appreciate when there's that kind of cooperation going among officials and among people that work for the public. I think that's what people demand and expect. And frankly, as we sit with a Congress that has no speaker and all the other problems we have in this world, a very difficult world, this is the model for the way we need to do it. We are not perfect here, not by any stretch, but we're trying. And that is half the battle. And so I want to take a moment to reflect that. And that's considerable work. And so I appreciate all the work that's gone into getting all these budgets together like this.
Madam President,
Go right ahead.
yes, I just would like to say that we really are not finished with the salary ordinance. We're going to be voting on it today, but we don't have the final numbers. We don't have the contract expenses that might come forward having to do with the merit deputies and the people at the jail. What kind of difference that might make in our budget, as well as we're still hanging out there trying to figure out some of these other departments that have already requested some changes. We don't know if there's going to be changes for some reason. WIS has questions on it. Well, how many months does it take to get an answer? So I'm just saying we should have already had answers so that we would make sure that our salary ordinance was complete. Because without that, we really don't know what our budget is. And I'm just sharing that. I'm not finding fault with the council. I think you've done spectacular job with changing numbers every meeting. I mean, the numbers kept moving around. And I know that I'm just a bit more fiscally, I don't even know that I would use the word conservative, because I know it takes taxes to make anything work. But I want to be more accountable to the public and to our employees. And so I'm just hoping that we'll push hard to get all of this well in advance and not put every member of this council on the kind of task that we've had for the last few weeks. It's not right. It's not fair to the council. It's not the best thing for the staff, and it sure isn't the right thing for the public. So I want to just throw that out there. Not everybody's going to like what the salaries are, but certainly we started out hearing from the commissioners, well, everybody can have 8.5. Then we heard at that very first meeting, oh no, we're going to be way in the deficit. And then it was like, well, no, we've got some money here. This was just too much rolling, changing information. And maybe this isn't what anybody wants to hear right now. But there you go. I generally don't stay quiet about these things. And but at the end of the day, I just want to say that I think 7 members here have learned a lot this year. I mean, I do. I think it was a challenge, and I think we've learned a lot and learned to either work together or work against one another. And most of the time, I would like to feel like I've been able to be working together. It doesn't mean I have to agree. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Are there other comments?
I'd like to follow Counselor Hawk's comment and say that I think our inability to have in front of us at this moment the salaries for the merit deputies and the jail officers and for the highway workers is something that we shouldn't need to have to be dealing with. We just simply need to start earlier in the year and have a commitment to wrapping up by date X that will allow us to include that information in our real budget. So we know what totals we're talking about. And so we can present information to the public in an organized fashion.
Thank you. Other comments? All right. Is there any public comment on the salary ordinance for elected officials for 2024?
I don't have a particular thing about elected officials, but something else. My name is Lee Rundhafer. Let me write my name down here. Sorry, I had to do a little child run and I missed some of this meeting. I'd like to thank each of you for working so hard on this budget. I listened in as the budget requests came in from each department were addressed. And when the president of the commissioners, Githens, requested an across-the-board cost of living COLA increase of 8.5% be considered by the county, it seemed as if it was an unreachable goal. By comparison, federal employees got a hefty 5.2% raise, so well above that. The item which did not come up, however, was the commissioner's plan for an up to $200 million lease bond to pay for a new justice campus, or as we know it, the jail. Also not discussed was the allocation of the funds from the $10 million anticipatory bond approved in 2022 for use toward the purpose of purchase of property for the jail or rehabilitation facility. Excuse me. The Monroe County Council 2024 budget does not address the budget reality that there are plans for a huge new capital project, which will be an albatross hanging on the budget for the next 20 plus years. And this, in addition to the continued expansion of the ongoing capital project of the convention center. The jail project will not be funded from cost savings or prudent reserves, but from yet another increase in the local income tax to fund another lease bond in which we mortgage away our future income at a cost of 5% or more. These lease bonds should be handled by referendum, like the schools. Capital expenditures of this magnitude should be discussed before the deal is done, in secret and with little, if any, public notice. The community needs healthcare resources, mental health care resources, and assistance to care with families with children. Is my time up? No. These treatment-based rehabilitative services will reduce overall budgetary cost rather than create a carceral economy from those who live in and visit our community. I believe that many minimum wage employees won't be helped by this percentage increase, especially if it is then taxed away. My request to you is to reject adding to the county's overall debt portfolio and not take on new projects which will take even more resources away from three things that we actually know we need and we know that will help. The lock 'em up era is over. Investment in community resources is the only sustainable way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote on the 2024 salary ordinance for elected officials, please?
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Hogg. No. I didn't hear you, sorry.
No.
Thank you. Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley.
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-1.
Thank you. And we are now at item 4B, which is the 2024 salary ordinance for Monroe County employees. And Counselor Deckard has offered to read this rather lengthy ordinance for us.
I'm proud to do as much as I can. If I give out, you jump in, but I should be okay. I'm proud to read this one because so much work went into it. Here we go. The salary schedule and compensation policies for county employees, ordinance 2023-42B. Whereas the Indiana legislature adopted Indiana Code 36-2-3, which established the Monroe County Council as the governing fiscal body of Monroe County, and whereas IC 36-2-5-3 grants the Monroe County Council the power to 1, fix the number of officers, deputies, and other employees. 2, describe and classify positions and services. 3, adopt schedules of compensation. And 4, hire a contract with persons to assist in the development of schedules of compensation. Whereas the Monroe County Council wishes to establish compensation schedules and pay policies, be it ordained by the Monroe County Council of Indiana that this ordinance fixes the number and compensation of employees of the county for the period of January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024, including all officers, deputies, assistants, and other employees whose salaries comprise of funds payable from any county fund or budget as provided by IC 36-2-5. This compensation is limited by the following lines in maximum levels of salary shown on the salary compensation grids. All payments made pursuant to this ordinance are contingent upon the strict compliance with and adherence to the benefit, compensation, fiscally related, and state and federally mandated requirements of the Monroe County Personnel Policy Handbook. It is the intent of the County Council that this language will encourage compliance with personnel policies which may have a fiscal impact on Monroe County government. Any Monroe County employee, including those employees under a contractual agreement or whose salaries are determined by a state prescribed rule, order, guideline, or mandate, shall not receive compensation above the salary grids outlined within this ordinance. The county auditor shall not issue pay warrants for any pay that exceeds the authorized amount specified in the salary ordinance. The compensation amounts are listed as approximate annual appropriation amounts, and the calculation of the biweekly or hourly compensation rates may result in a slight variation and will not be adjusted at year end. Compensation paid on or after January 1st, 2024 and prior to midnight, December 31st, 2024 shall be calculated and paid within the parameters of this salary ordinance and the Personnel Policy Handbook regardless of when the work is performed. Monroe County Personnel Policy Handbook. Any item not covered with this salary ordinance shall be governed by the Monroe County Personnel Policy Handbook. Job description classification definitions. Beginning calendar year 2022. Council approved using the updated classification and levels for Monroe County government job descriptions. Compensation levels have been updated using alphanumeric letters A through E. The listing of all classifications are outlined in Section A of the ordinance notes. Full-time hire date compensation step increase schedule. Employees will attain a new compensation step increase level on the first day of the pay period, which includes the anniversary of the most recent full-time hire date. The compensation step increase schedule is outlined in Section B of the ordinance notes. Knowledge, skills, and abilities, compensation procedures. Employees who have gone through the review process and are approved to receive acknowledged skills and abilities status may receive compensation at either the 1, 3, or 8-year level based on the compensation grid applicable to the assigned job description, classifications, and level. An approved KSA status will remain with the original requesting department for the determined period of time. Departments may request an employee's KSA status be transferred when an applicable position becomes vacant within their department. An employee's KSA status does not automatically transfer with the employee and is subject to review. An employer's approved KSA status only adjusts the compensation base rate for that employee. An employee's approved KSA status is not included in the years of service pertaining to longevity and/or vacation calculations. A listing of approved KSA hires with term dates is outlined in Section C of the ordinance notes. Longevity scale. Employees employed within Monroe County government prior to November 1st, 2023 shall receive longevity payment for continual and uninterrupted service. These payments will continue until either there's a break in the employee's service or the employee ends employment with the county. Any employee hired on or after November 1st, 2023 is ineligible to receive longevity payments. To determine longevity, the effective date for longevity is the employee's most recent full-time hire date of employment with the county. All records must be verified by the Employee Services Department that involve any type of uninterrupted service. Longevity pay for eligible employees is based on a schedule outlined in Section D of the ordinance notes of complete and uninterrupted years of service. A break in service will release in the loss of longevity pay if the rehire date is on or after November 1st, 2023. To be eligible for a longevity payout, an employee must still be employed on the day after his/her anniversary date. Elected officials do not receive county longevity pay. Employees whose salaries are determined by state prescribed rule, order, guideline, or mandated do not receive county longevity pay. Probation officers would be an exception to this rule and would receive longevity. Prior years of service credit. Beginning January 1st, 2017, County Council approved allowing complete years only of prior years of service for each term of full-time Monroe County government employment be applied when calculating the rehire of an employee's compensation step increase level. Months of service which are less than 1 full year shall not be counted or combined in order to achieve a complete year's service. For example, an employee who worked for 1 year and 3 months shall be credited with 1 year of service. Council administrator and/or personnel administrator must verify all prior Monroe County government service with employee personnel records and/or with a perf report before being applied to the returning employee salary. Council administrator and/or personnel administrator will notify the department head if the prior service credit total has been verified and granted. Council administrator will maintain a spreadsheet of employees with confirmed prior service credit for future use. Any additional information and/or explanation of the Monroe County government salary schedule and compensation policies is included in the salary ordinance for the purpose of clarification and transparency. Monroe County Council policy regarding salaries tied to state mandated salaries. Annual salaries for the Monroe County Chief Public Defender, Chief Deputy Public Defender, and Monroe Circuit Court Commissioner are all tied and/or related to the salaries mandated by the state of Indiana for the Monroe County Circuit Judges and Monroe County Prosecutor. The state mandated salaries are amended annually on July 1st. It is the intent and direction of Monroe County Council that any and all salaries paid by the Monroe County Council, which are tied and/or related to the above-mentioned salaries mandated by the state of Indiana, shall be automatically amended at the same time as the state mandated salaries. The Monroe County Council recognizes that this is an exception to the general rule for county set salaries, which are generally modified on January 1st. Additional details, including Defense Service Standards, Standard G, Supreme Court Compensation Information, IC 33-39-6-5, and IC 36-2-3-17 are incorporated by reference.
Second.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from council or comments on the salary ordinance? Yes.
I wish to make a comment real quick here. So in today's packet, we just adopted a $112 million budget. That's a lot of money. And then I see there's two trends emerging here. The Monroe County budget's growing. We know that our certified budget grew an average of 6.2% since 2019, and that our certified budget will surpass somewhere around 91 million And for the reference, just 10 years ago, that was $36 million. So more than half of what we're approving today. But the point I wanted to make today was that our budget is not simply a series of numbers that we download from Gateway. The 2024 budget is a reaffirmation that Monroe County's greatest strength is its people. Throughout this budget season, the council heard 95 budgets from 32 departments or districts. The through line was that inflation was wreaking havoc on daily lives, and we heard you. Through emails, public comment, conversations on sidewalks or in grocery store aisles, we heard that expenses were rising. And we're showing tonight that we heard you. Consider that this budget accomplishes three things: an 8.5% cost of living increase in your salary. $21.08 is the new minimum wage in Monroe County. A 40-hour work week and raises for skilled in-demand legal positions is now enshrined and makes Monroe County competitive. The total of these increased investments in people sums to $2,731,705. Let me say that again. We heard you to the tune of an additional $2.7 million. Now, this is important because there's 800 people on our payroll. This means that the growing array of public services being provided by Monroe County is done by just 0.6% of the population. That's a lot of work being done by a small cadre of talented, experienced individuals. And note that all three of those crowning achievements that I just listed, they were all centered on recruiting and retaining the amazing public servants that daily renew Monroe County's unique character as the best in the state, in my opinion. Of course, none of what's happening in this budget today with employee salaries could have been done without the collaboration between council and department heads. We set an ambitious goal and together we achieved it. Sacrifices were made, priorities were postponed, but the greater good was accomplished and our county will be better for it. During this budget season, the county also took major steps forward with adoption of JFAC recommendations. And while these recommendations don't have fiscal impact, it does recognize that we need to build a campus close to services. Lastly, there is so much more work to be done. We face challenges to our resources and threat of annexation, a macroeconomic environment that is uncertain, economic inequities, and a housing crisis. And in future budgets, I look forward to addressing these concerns and working closely with our department heads and county employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on our salary ordinance?
Well, since we really don't have our final numbers, we really don't know what that total amount is going to be. At the very beginning, when it was suggested that we do the 8.5%, I said, I'm all for it. Just show me the numbers. Show us that we can do it. And the information we've received, of course, the person who provided the information doesn't have all the information because we don't have it. It appeared to me that he was saying, the paperwork was saying that we could sustain this for what, 2 years? Is that as you understand it? And so what happens in court, I think that's Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., having to do with annexation, that will have a lot to do with how we move forward. I really want to support, as I've said from the beginning, I want to support our employees. I just hope they also understand if that annexation goes through, it's going to really change what this county council can do for our employees. And remember, our employees represent services. That's what they do. That's the public pays taxes for services, and the people who provide those services are our employees. So I'm going to support this, but I recognize that it may not be sustainable. And as you know, I'm not going to be a big proponent of raising taxes to make it sustainable. So just wanted to be fair out at the front.
Thank you. Are there other comments from council on our salary ordinance?
Can I add something?
I appreciate Counselor Hawk's comments, and I appreciate the diligence she brings to all this. Sometimes she and I we have some moments, but this council working together, which is one of the last bipartisan institutions we have in this county, is a tremendous thing. One thing I'll say is in the spirit of what she's saying, and with the annexation issues that we have pending, I want to make this kind of, I said this at the end of our meeting, but we were about one in the morning, it felt like, and people may not have heard this, but I throw this out as a reminder and an admonition to other elected officials. And specifically, I'm speaking to our friends at the city. It is important for you to consider the effects and repercussions of what you do in everything that you do. And if you do something like annexation, which seems to be incredibly unpopular, and I've talked with Representative David Hall with the state of Indiana about how we can change that law, and he's been very receptive to that. And I appreciate him working with me in a bipartisan way towards trying to maybe figure this out, working with our community. But I will say this, for the city, you cannot come and say, I'm gonna come get some of these resources, dollars, and annex people in a way that perhaps they don't want to be annexed. And that's some of the sentiment I pick up informally. You can't do that. And then on the same time, turn around and say, hey, county, I want to tell you how you are to do all this. And by the way, when you're done with that, why don't you do all this and do that? Now, the way I look at it, if you offer a suggestion to your neighbor, you do not at the same time rob your neighbor's pocket. And I just look, what's done is done. And here we are. December 31st ends one administration and begins another. I encourage every elected official that can hear my breath or cares for what I say or doesn't care one iota. Think about what your actions and your words do in the community. We're not that big. These things matter. You cannot say, I think you ought to do all these things, and meanwhile take those dollars. These are people's services jobs that we are literally working on. We have bent over backward to hit it 8.5%. And again, I want to thank folks like our county treasurer, who I think is going to talk here in just a moment, who came forward and said, you know what, we don't need to do this. I could do it, but I'm going to take this out of my budget because I want to take care of my folks. I appreciate that. If every public official would walk in with that kind of mindset, whether it's annexation or it's I'm going to do this thing, my gosh, the world we'd have. We would have a beautiful process. So please, public officials, if you're taking office, if you're in office, we have got to wake up and pull our heads out of different places. And I'll let you fill that in. But we got to do it because these things matter, and the public is watching and they're fed up with us. They are just exhausted with it. So let's get on that. Let's make that a mission in a New Year's resolution. And I apologize for my candor, but this has been sitting with me and it needs to be said. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, appreciate that. Is there any public comment on our salary ordinance? Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Jessica McClellan, Monroe County Treasurer. I just wanted to come to tell you thank you, because you get a lot of requests every year at budget time. You get a lot of demands and you have a very hard job. And from the employees and from the department heads that have to hire and train and retain employees, and from employees that want to be able to keep working for Monroe County government because they love the work that they do and the services that they're able to provide. Thank you. It's short and sweet, but I think you worked really hard and you earned it. Thanks.
Well, that was lovely. Welcome.
Yes, Jeff Cockrell, Legal Department. I'm just here to echo those comments. I know I was at the meeting where people were expressing their concerns and their troubles, and you guys came through, and we really appreciate it. I've noticed a little less stress in the courthouse since this all began, and it started looking like this was the 8.5% was potentially going to be a reality. And so I'd appreciate it. I appreciate you guys going out of your way and working really hard to make sure that my fellow employees have a wage that helps them live. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? It looks like Ms. Jelen is raising her hand if she could be, she is allowed to speak. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Council. I also just want to thank you very much for the cost of living adjustment and also the 55-cent increase for Commonwealth employees. I think you delivered exactly what was needed for our hardworking employees. We've heard for a long time that annexation is coming. In the interim, our employees who have worked hard to help people that have been affected by proposal for annexation while they're still in the county planning jurisdiction. I think there are many departments that work hard for people, no matter the jurisdiction boundaries. So I appreciate you coming through on the cost of living adjustment, and we're going to continue to work hard and help the general public. And we hear you, and we thank you for everything that you've done. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the, I don't even know, salary ordinance for county employees? Right. In that case, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Yay. Our next item on the agenda is council comments, our last item before we adjourn. So I will open it. Oh, look at that. So we'll start on the end and that's fine. That's all right.
Thank you, Madam President. As casualties rise in Israel and surrounding areas, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that our hearts break for our sisters and brothers who are caught up in this violence. I recognize this is not the time nor the place to pretend to be an expert on international relations nor Middle East peace. Instead, it's time for allyship. For those of you in Monroe County who spent these past 11 days getting in touch with relatives overseas, we hear you. For those who still cannot get a hold of your relatives, we yearn for your relief. For those of you who've lost sleep or experienced an increase in anxiety as the uncertainty of this situation persists, we ache with you in a desire for peace. For those of you who stood in Dunn Meadow or watched online, we see you. Now is the time that we stand as elected officials, as accomplices for love, and publicly reaffirm our community values of understanding, acceptance, and religious tolerance. This is not a community where hate will grow. This is not a county that will tolerate prejudice. We are united, Monroe County, and we are united against hate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Crossley.
I don't know what to expect after today's meeting. Didn't think we were going to get comical satire in our public comment there, and then we got yeah. So to bring it back to our budget while we were here doing the business at hand, I just wanted to say thank you from the top like on down. Thank you to our sergeant at arms that continue to be here at our meetings, to our auditor staff, our county attorney, our council administrator, as well as Ms. Courtney Mosier. A lot of people, there's a lot of probably blood, sweat, and tears that have gone to a lot of this, a lot of sleepless nights, but thank you for allowing us to do our jobs better as much. I know it seems like sometimes we can gripe and nitpick at a lot of different things. Our job isn't easy because we get people that nitpick at us as well. But however, I think it's in true collaboration form that we are doing this together. So I appreciate that. So thank y'all very much. This is my second budget, and I feel like I've been here forever. But I have learned a lot and continue to grow stronger in my duties. And I take this job very seriously, and I love doing what I do here, along with across the aisle collaboration with everybody here, including Councilor Hawk. I know sometimes when we meet sometimes you always are like, did you get that? Did you remember that? And I do. So I definitely appreciate a lot of that. And I've just grown every year with the budget here. So I definitely appreciate that. But last but not least, to all of our folks here that make Monroe County look good and continue to do what they do, thank y'all as well. From all the emails that we received, as it had been echoed here before, from conversations, phone calls, responding back to all of those. We knew that we had our heart set out and trying to get everybody to that big magical number that we have just gotten to tonight, but we appreciate your patience with us. We just appreciate you advocating for yourself. And for department heads to continue to advocate for themselves and their folks. It just really feels like a family-oriented kind of thing. And I definitely appreciate my job, my duty here as county councilor, and I look forward to continuing the year. We got ourselves a lot of work in the upcoming year with the in 2024 with the annexation. If I dare to say, conversations regarding a new justice facility. I think we need to say justice facility because not just a jail is coming. We have to change our narrative and our thought process with that. But again, we have our work cut out. But again, for the 2024, everybody that has done a lot of work into making this happen and possible, thank you, and thank you.
Thank you.
I really quick, I appreciate Councilor Crosley mentioning those things. I always will be thankful for President Wiltz. I wish she'd stay president for another 45 years because I get to, as her pro tem, I get to watch her up close and talk about blood, sweat, and tears going to a meeting. She does a lot of that before we get to it. And I'm grateful for it. And she is my friend. And it's just huge. I also wanted to say, Councilor McKim, who's not with us, if any of us had to be absent, Councilor McKim probably takes that the hardest. Maybe Councilor Hawks tied with him, I'm not sure, but a lot of the effort in this budget that you see, the Herculean effort of the budget, it reflects his continued hard work. He and I are in the Bloomington Rotary, and we went through that buffet line many times before our guest speakers talking about, we got to talk about some cola here, and I don't mean RC cola. And he worked at it, and so I appreciate that as well. One thing I just want to point out as clerk's liaison, we have an election coming up for our municipal concerns, but an important distinction. If you are a resident of the Monroe County Community School Corporation, you have a referendum that has been placed before you by our school system, by the school board, the school system. And that means that referendum is them asking you as a voter within that district to vote whether or not that referendum shall pass. So while there is a lot of talk about the quiet city election, I always hate that because no election is quiet. There's a lot of angst for those candidates. There also is an important election for the MCCSC school system. And here's the way, if you're in MCCSC, if you're seeing those buses come by nearby, you're in that district. They want to hear from you. If you're in RBBCSC, you don't have this headache, and you probably heard from your neighbor if they'd had a referendum. So you're okay. I just want to assure you that you not only vote in this, but your polling places, which have been announced and decided by our commissioners, have now been set. And we will work as a county to get that out there. But I'm looking at a list here that is easily close to the number that we normally have. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, but here's the right information. If you live in the city and you also are a resident of the MCCSC school district, you don't have to be both of those at the same time. There's an election for you. So pay attention and vote on those things. Whatever your opinion on them, make sure that you're voting. Okay, public service announcement. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to say that I too miss Councilmember McKim. We have worked together on budgets for years, and I respect his knowledge and his work ethic to make sure that we all have the information that he works so hard to provide. And just what we will do when he's not here, I don't think there's anybody around that's going to be able to pick up the pieces and do what Jeff has done. So, and I know that in his heart, even though he's doing what his job requires him to do, and he's in a lovely place to be doing it, I know he would really like to be here this evening. So it should not go without notice that he is an integral part of making sure we understand the numbers.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I want to thank all my council colleagues for the opportunity to work with you. This is my 11th county budget. Doesn't that sound big? The process has improved over the years. It definitely has. We have better information every year. And I think that will continue to grow. For one thing, it has to grow because we have to make sure that our staff can provide the information that we get from Counselor McKim. We can't rely on him when he's no longer on the council. I think this year, a very important part of what we have been able to do has come from department heads who have worked with us very closely to trim their budgets so that they could compensate their employees in a manner that they really wanted to. And it took all of us working together to be able to put this budget together. So thank you.
Thank you. And as a reminder, the vote tonight had regarding, it was called the budget. We voted on the tax rates and appropriations. That's what we voted on.
Yes, we did.
So if you didn't like what it said on tax rates and appropriations, as I didn't, I wanted to make sure people understood the vote. And also, I wanted to make clear, because I think I probably surprised some people when it came to the elected officials' votes. See, I don't think you should pick and choose which elected official you like better, or you like their job, or you think they're doing their job better than another one. You either vote the whole thing up or down. It's different than in private business, where you can really say this person's not doing their job correctly, and we're not going to reward them with a raise. But this is county government, so it's too tied to making political decisions about the elected officials' salaries. So, and you either vote them all up, or in my case, I had to vote them all down. And as you might know, I have a lot of elected officials that's near and dear to my heart. And so they can throw rotten eggs at me the next time they see me. But there you go. I have to have broad shoulders. Remember, Jennifer?
Well, as always, I have little left to say after so many people have spoken so eloquently. But I echo the thanks, especially for the staff in this room who have been so supportive and done anything and everything we've needed. So thank you, Bree, Molly, and Kim, as well as Courtney, who is here in spirit, I'm sure. And just by way of an explanation on the budgeting process and sort of a bigger picture, I feel like with our budgeting, we have two separate but maybe overlapping duties. And the first of which is to our internal county government employees and the family that makes up county government. And we need to make sure that we are providing for them and for them to be able to do their jobs, as well as show up for those jobs because they're stable. And I feel privileged to be able to work with other folks on the council who I know also prioritized that this year. And I do feel good about the decisions we were able to make to support our county employees. The other part of this budget, though, is also that external facing community aspect for our constituents and the broader community of Monroe County and its residents. And there's a lot in this budget that is funding, as Councillor Hawk pointed out, the services that our government provides and the infrastructure that we support, everything from roads to courts and all kinds of other things in between. And while I thought that's what was going to be the bigger focus when I started this job, it really is just such a mix and a mash, and it's hard to pull those things apart. And it's been a learning process for me as well. It continues to be, and I'm learning something new almost every week about how all of that works together, and trying to find a balance has been a journey, that's for sure. Looking ahead, I want to just address the Justice Center and system that we have worked a lot on in the past year, especially Councillor Iverson and Councillor Crosley and myself on JFAC. We haven't stopped that work, and we're still, I'm still hopeful that there are discussions to be had and decisions to be made with public input in the public eye. I know there are a lot of pieces of information out there, not all of which are grounded in truth and reality, some of which are well-intentioned, some may not be. And I encourage all of you to reach out to your elected officials as we're going through some really challenging decision making. Our current budget does not have the jail in it. And I mean, there's some things that support the justice, and we do have the economic development tax set aside for a possible land purchase, vaguely defined. But we didn't budget for a new criminal justice center this time. It's not part of our regular budget. We have ARPA money, that American Rescue Plan Act money. That's also not in this budget. We have opioid settlement funds, also not in this budget. There's so much more that we're trying to do, so much more good we're trying to do, and the interaction with the public is integral to accomplishing that. So that's my soapbox. I will let you all go. Thank you, council colleagues, so very much for a successful budget and for working so hard. With that, we're adjourned.
Please stop the recording. Thank